Hello, wonderful people of the internet. I'm back again with the second part to our In Conversation series that we are doing to celebrate Peripeteia's 5th birthday. I'm Adam, the Artistic Director of Peripeteia Theatre Company.
Hi, I'm Aron, the resident sound designer of the company.
Hello, I'm Joe, resident actor of Peripeteia.
And this is just going to be another informal chat with all three of us talking about theatre and audio and all stuff creative, hopefully. So, first question, what drew you to your chosen art form? Whether it be theatre or whether it be sound design, what drew you towards that? Let's start off with you, Joe.
I'll be honest, it's kind of all I've known, to be honest, when it comes to theatre and arts and everything like that. I've been doing it probably since I learned to walk in one way or another. So all through, high school, college, university, Peripeteia, outside of Peripeteia, everything like that. It's sort of just been all I've known how to do. So that's really where I started with it. I got into it at a very young age and just never stopped and don't plan on it.
Good. Aaron, how about you with sound design?
Um, well, the music and kind of experimenting with creating sound that came from school. Like I was schooled in classical music, so that was the beginnings. But then I sort of just fell into it, as it is the case with, I guess, a varyingly lot of things of what I'm doing. But I really glad I did because for collaborating with other people is a big part of it, and I think that's probably the most exciting. What really keeps me in it. So yes.
Excellent. Both of you then, what is your creative process in terms of starting new projects? So whether it be starting music or starting acting, what is your creative progress with new projects?
Yeah. I think for myself, it always starts with the text, and which is interesting because a lot of the work that I do is very text based. So I think that for me, I always try and find the clues and just everything in the text. So I remember in shows that we've done with Peripeteia before where I've just been so focused on what is the text telling us. And that's where I start. And it's also where I finish because everything for me is in there. There's always inspirations outside of that, of course. But I think that for me, when it comes to finding my creative process and everything like that, it's always grounded in the text because whether it be a Shakespeare play, a new piece of writing, or anything like that, if you stay truthful to the words that are on the page and the story that you, the writer, the director, everyone involved, the story that we're all trying to tell, I think it's hard to go wrong when you do that.
What are those other inspirations? I'll pick your brain on the text.
Sure.
What are those other inspirations that you have?
It's really hard to not be inspired by what's going on in the world around you. I think I remember when we did what feels like forever ago, 20 today now, about my character was about to turn 20. And I remember at the time of rehearsals, I was about to turn 22, 23, something I can't remember. So it was really easy to draw the inspiration from that. And working with one of my best friends and everything like that, being able to really cement myself in that world of someone who is, it's a big turning point for them turning 20 or turning however old I was turning, I forget now. But I think it's really easy to attach yourself to what's on the page, at least for me anyway. I always think that that's a way of finding truth with it. But also, again, what's going on in the world, what you're consuming when it comes to media, music, what you're reading at the moment. I think that it's always been quite easy for me to draw inspiration from what I'm just experiencing around me at the time.
What about you, Aaron? How do you do your creative process?
I think for the audio design for Peripeteia, it's always the text as well, and also well, whenever I can, I would just check in also with the writer to kind of understand more of how they perceive this text, like what are the themes I picked up and what are the themes that they thought are also relevant. So that is definitely the first step. And then, yeah, inspiration as well. I think in my case it's less overarching. It's a bit more concrete to, okay, what are the pieces of music that come to my mind when I read this, and what is their unifying theme, and how could I capture that in a way that would suit the play.
I think we are, because we are predominantly a new writing company. It is really important that we do put the text as a mediator, whether it's in a rehearsal room, whether it's in audio design, whatever it is. I do think it is really important that the text is sort of the baseline of which we go down towards. And for myself, the text is always apparent, and we always refer back to the text in order to find the answers next way forward. It's really interesting that you both say the text is the mediator and it's the baseline of what happens, because although we work at Peripeteia together, I think the Dreams revival that we're doing in October is the first project where all three of us have worked together. Sense. And the Dreams is a different type of project, because although it's inspired by Barry Bermitage and Delia Derbyshire work in the Dreams, their inventions for radio, it was a new text that we did 5 years ago, where Anna and Bernadette came and dissect down the text and reintroduce different themes and different narratives. So I think what I'm trying to get at is it's interesting that we've got different creative practices going on and different types of people going and working for Peripeteia, but we all have the baseline of the text, which is really interesting.
I think with you mentioning there about Dreams as well, I think with us working on that at the moment, the one thing to remember is it was designed as an audio piece. And now, years later, we're doing it as a live show, and the different challenges that brings as well. So even in the 5 years that Peripeteia has been around, we already have a history that we're referring back to in practice. And I think that's really, really exciting, especially for someone who's luckily enough going to be performing in Dreams. I have done everything I can to make sure I don't refer back to the audio, not because there's not real inspiration there, but because I want to make sure that what I'm doing is something that's really authentic to the text. And I know that me and you, Adam, have had conversations about that before, but I think that once we get our teeth really into that text and get it on its feet, I think it's going to be really interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I do think, jump in, Aron, if you disagree, but because the Dreams is so surrealistic in its approach, that when we did it, first time that we did it and the second time that we're doing it now, although the text is a base layer and it's the inspirational point for it, there is some sort of flexibility and some sort of interpretable behavior that we can have. And I think that's where sound design comes in with it. As sound design, I think, Aron, when we first worked on it 5 years ago, you correctly said that that's another person within the room. So the text has a support of the sound design.
Yes, yeah. But I think that's what I meant when I said I really enjoy the collaborative aspect of it, because obviously there is not one right way to do things, and the more people having some sort of concept which don't necessarily are the same, but you can make them compatible, which is I guess in huge part your work, Adam, as the director, to make that happen. But yeah, interesting, because for Dreams, I think that was true. But then I was thinking about all the other pieces we did, and I kind of more on the side always of the sound should not be prominent. Like it should add to the play,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't. It should be.
Is there an element, do you think, Aaron, of sound where it's almost you don't notice it, but your brain does? So it's very much complementary.
Yeah, that's kind of the aim I would
Yeah.
have. I don't I don't think I'm there yet where I can consistently achieve it, but yeah, I think pieces that would come close to it are the ones I am more proud of. Because yeah, as you said, it should make a world of difference if you take it away, but you don't really notice it when it's there.
Yeah. Which project have we worked on at Peripeteia that you are most proud of?
Well, for this reason, I think "Mom, Can You Hear Me" would be the one I would pick. Yeah, I think they're probably also because that was the first time I really managed to kind of limit myself and be like, okay, I'm only gonna use these and these and these devices and methods and see where it goes. And yeah, I think it worked out really well. It was very simple yet effective. And yeah, I think it's also, well, as sad as the play itself is, but the experience of working on it was really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the sound design that you did for the human voice, the production that we did in 2024.
Yeah.
That was really, that's what I mean when sound design becomes another person within the room, because it's the human voice was a one-hander, whereas Mum, Can You Hear Me was a two-hander, so there was conversational elements towards it. But I think it just added another flavour towards this one-person show.
Yeah,
that was really effective.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I also really like that one. It was a bit more conventional in terms of the approach I took.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed that one as well. It was just a bit more in my comfort zone than
Yeah.
Can You Hear Me?
Yeah. How do you know, Joe, when a piece is ready for this next step? So it's finished, it's polished as much as we can polish it to present it on stage in front of an audience.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a tricky one. I think that you just have a gut feeling. I think you just have a gut feeling. I mean, nothing's ever going to be perfect. You know, I think that you can spend forever and ever tinkering with something to try and make it just that little bit better. But there is a part of me that also thinks that there is a real, it's the whole benefit of live theatre, I think, as well. There's a real benefit to what's going to happen just on the night. I think back to some of the shows that I've done, but also with Peripeteia 20 Today, I think it was 3 nights that we did for 20 Today. And each night there was something different that I felt. There's one speech that my character gave about his mother. And when it got to that speech, every single night, something felt different. I had preferences in terms of, like, in hindsight, which ones I preferred. But in the moment, every time it felt that little bit different. And while I appreciate the sentiment that we should be giving audiences the same experience every night, I also am not ignorant to the fact that we're human.
Yeah.
You know, we're human, and things, you will never get a 100% accurate. That's the benefit of live theatre. Like I say, you're never going to get a 100% true copy and paste every single night. So in terms of when you think it's ready for the next step, I think that looking at a monologue, for example, there is such a thing as too much tinkering. You know, I think that I've definitely been guilty of that in the past, of just hammering something to the point where it doesn't need to be. You know, you've got something good, leave it at that, and trust that as you keep on working through it gradually, you're going to refine it more. You don't need to keep on beating it and going over and over again. I think that's one of the challenges that I'm noticing as well with Dreams as well, what we're working on at the moment. I know that we've spoken about this before in terms of I have to have more trust in the text than maybe I have done in the past. Like I said, I always begin and end with the text, but I always try and invoke a layer of myself on there or my performative element to it. And I think that with Dreams, the challenge for me is definitely so far being just let the text do most, if not all, of the work. You are merely a vessel for it. Hopefully that answers the question without going on too much of a tangent.
Yeah. No, I think it goes again back to what we were speaking about before. It goes back to the text. And I think a flavor of that is for different genre or different type of what the piece is about. So when in my mind, when you mention monologues, I think of Listen,
Yeah.
the monologue that you had in Listen. So Listen, and we'll come on to digital theatre in a bit, but Listen was a very powerful monologue about how lockdown was affecting you, and you were speaking to Hannah MacDonald, who was another frequent collaborator of ours, and that whole journey that you took us on. I think when we rehearsed that, we only did it a couple of times because it was digital theatre and people was giving us time up for free and stuff. So we couldn't rehearse as long as we wanted to with it. So I think it was about you going away out of a rehearsal room and finding different ways to do it. Where on the flip side of that, with Dreams, because it is such a surrealistic, interpretable type of text, and you're the only piece in this new version that we've got that has a massive chunk in it, it's different to what the text conveys towards us and what message we want to give to the audience with that.
Listen was such an interesting one when correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time where we're ever on screen with Listen is when the monologue is happening and right at the very end as well.
Yeah.
That was interesting because having Hannah there to just absorb everything that I was saying, like you say, it was a very different experience to Dreams. So yeah, that was an interesting time, was Listen, that's for sure. Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, we'll come on to the founding of the company in a bit if we have time and stuff, and sort of the age of digital theatre and how that's affected and stuff like that. But I remember Aron, the first ever production that we did together was Bernadette's MA project, which was a sample of Mum Can You Hear Me?
Yeah.
But that was just a real interesting time to rehearse and observe and do everything. So how does that, so say from the NA production to doing it as a full-length production with Peripeteia probably about a year and a bit later, how do we know what is the next step towards sound design, and is it useful to have a sample of a text and then take it into the next step, which is a full-length production? How's that process for you?
Good question. I mean, it was so long ago. I'm not sure if I should be trusted on this answer, but I think it always helps when you have time to just sit on a work that you did before and then revisit it. And if there is, because yeah, in this case we already had a sample version of it, and the final one was obviously longer, but it was still pretty much the same same ideas, the same structure of the play as well. So it was a single main character and some voices accompanying their journey. So in that way, yeah, as I said, it always helps when you have to do something like professionally, and then you have really, I think it's a luxury to have another opportunity to go revisit it sometime later with a fresh perspective. Maybe that's why, yeah. Maybe that's why I could be confident on the sound design part to go down a route I wouldn't do otherwise. Because yeah, I think I might have felt it safety of, okay, this is something we've done before, so I could take the liberty to experiment a bit more, just because I have that initial intuition of where do you want to take things with this play.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps.
Yeah, because I only say that because that was the spark that sort of triggered Peripeteia in a way. I think that there's a mixture of elements, but I think that and lockdown triggered the spark to create Peripeteia as a theatre company that we know it as today.
Yeah. It's funny. I think maybe I was talking to Bernadette some of these days, and it came up like when we did the first, the initial version of the of Mom, Can You Hear Me? And then I got this flashback, like, Jesus, that like we recorded the action at my old workplace in the basement part, and yeah, that that really took me back just thinking about, like, wow, there was that basement, and yeah, that's really the first project. Crazy.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, lockdown. And I said this in the first part that we did with Melissa, introducing Melissa, and if people want to watch that, that's on YouTube as well. But it was an interesting time, lockdown, because I do think, reflecting back now, although it was a sad time and a lot of bad things did happen, but there's nuggets which we can look towards and go, actually, that was a really interesting or beautiful moment that happened. I think one takeaway for me that I had was it taught me how to direct without being in the room, which is a really interesting tool to have in my toolkit. It means that I can be in a rehearsal room that I'm not physically there in, but still have an impact and a reflection on what to do in that sense. So I don't know if any of you have takeaways from lockdown or digital theatre or anything.
Yeah, I think there's, in terms of lockdown, lockdown was insane. The main takeaway that I had from lockdown, probably through the work that we did with Peripeteia and also work that I did outside, just in theatre in general during lockdown, was it doesn't matter what situation you put it in, theatre will survive. And I wholeheartedly, I believe that. I kind of have to believe it, to be honest with you. Otherwise I'll just be up all night. But I think that seeing not just us, but just the entire sort of fringe scene do what they could, as it were, to ensure that this craft that we love and that we care about stays through such a difficult time. I think that really made me think, okay, yeah, whatever happens, theatre will live on. Having said that, I think that there's a real conversation to be had about how we come out of it. I think it's no secret to say that we are still, I mean, the whole world is still paying for lockdown, but I think that theatre is still struggling because funding's always going to be an issue and everything like that. But I don't want, and we don't, I don't think, but I worry about just the landscape of theatre in terms of, does it rely so much on the digital or the ease of conversations on Zoom or rehearsals on Zoom? And they totally have their place. They 100% do. But I think we can all agree there is nothing quite like being in a rehearsal room or anything like that. Those moments will always, in my opinion, be cherished. So it made me, to answer the question, lockdown made me realize theatre will survive regardless of what situation you put it in. But it also made me appreciate that human connection of live theatre and of being in a rehearsal room with people and everything like that.
Because it's interesting that you say that, Joe, because there's many a conversation that I have during countless times with different individuals that go, oh, theatre is a dying art form, not seeing the flavoursome that it had before lockdown and stuff like that. So it's interesting that you say that it will survive. I think it needs to adapt to survive in certain elements, but it is surviving in different ways and different approaches to people.
Yeah.
So whether that is through a recorded medium, through the National Theatre at Home, or say, for instance, with Peripeteia with a digital hub and stuff, it has different ways to it reach and connect with an audience that it didn't need to do before lockdown.
Recordings became very popular. Like you mentioned, National Theatre at Home. I think that during lockdown, I think there was a National Theatre subscription, I think, that I ended up starting just to watch. I think it was the Midsummer Night's Dream production that they did and a few other ones, Present Laughter. And that was a way of just keeping theatre going and just keeping me in front of the eyes of theatre. So yeah, definitely. Adaptability is theatre's always adapted. And this is not the first time theatre has had to adapt, and it certainly won't be the last.
Yeah. And just on a tangent from that, I think it is a really useful thing, Zoom, although we do are about it a lot of time, because it means that we can connect with people that aren't in a travel radius from us. And I say that because Aron, you're in London at the minute, and Joe, you're in Liverpool, and I'm in Manchester. And again, I said it in the first part of this In Conversational series, me and Aron have never met, but have worked on double-digit projects together. And it's a really interesting dynamic that we have, Aron, that we are able to communicate through email, WhatsApp, Zoom, whatever you will want to say. But it doesn't have to be an in-person, face-to-face conversation. It can be, through the digital age, something in which collaboration can happen.
Yeah, that's something I actually wanted to mention at this point, because I think at the start of every project I kind of worry about that aspect, like how is the communication gonna work? And obviously, because the rehearsals for stage plays would be in Manchester, I won't see those. I won't really see how the audio works together or doesn't work together with what's happening on stage. But I do think you give really, really good instructions and very clear for me, like what needs changing, how it seems like, you really have that strong concept in a way that kind of makes sense to me as well. And it's just easy to make those changes. And then it's always really, really, really great to read when reviews would reflect on that as well. So yeah, I think that is really outstanding, to be honest.
I do think it is some sort of frequent collaboration strengthens the communication, if I could say anything about that. And I know that we don't always use the same actors, or we don't always use the same directors or the same writers. But I think as a creative yourself, you kind of know a similar wavelength in which people are at when it comes to auditioning, for example. You know that who's going to be right for the role, but it's also auditioning the actor who's going to be presenting that role to the audience. And that's the same with creative team members. There's a couple of stage managers that I use in Manchester, but they're few and far between, and I will always use the same ones because I know the communication's there and I know how much responsibility they have within the piece and within the production and the time in which they come on board. So I do think there is an element towards that. The more that you work with someone, the more you understand their wavelength and the communication and what needs to happen, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Audience, then, we mentioned a little bit about it beforehand, but what effect does audience have during the creative process? Do you think about the audience or do you not?
I think for me, it depends. It very much does depend. the piece is never complete without the audience. I'm a firm believer of that, because the dress rehearsal is always different to opening night. It's just always going to be different, because they are the last piece of the puzzle. Especially in something like a comedy, I think you can really feed off of them, and it's definitely a relationship you have with them. I think as well, when it comes to more classical pieces like Shakespeare, where you are talking to the audience, or even in a more modern piece when you're talking to the audience, you can't deny that there is that relationship there. Is that something that I think about during the creation of work? Not that much. Controversial opinion, maybe, because unless it's that down to like a staging thing,
Yeah.
I rather like to focus on what I'm doing at hand, because like we know this as well as anyone, we can't control what someone thinks or anything like that. So I just always think to myself, am I doing the best that I can? Is this up to a good standard? What do I think the audience will like? And just go from there. But they are the last piece of the puzzle. Hearing people's reactions and how they feed off of certain things that you do on stage or that happen on stage. There is an undeniable element that is the last piece. But I can't say the audience are something that I will often think about in the middle of a rehearsal. I'd rather just focus on the craft itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Taking it away a little bit from theatre, though, Aron, how is it for you when you create your music?
Ooh, I want to say no. I think I'm very stubborn in that way. So, if I find something that I like, I think I can get as stubborn that even when I ask for feedback, I just completely neglect what feedback I was given. If I don't like that feedback and it doesn't really align with what I thought, which is very frustrating, I guess, for everyone, really. But no, in just music, I would create not for the sake of theater. I don't think I would ever consider the audience. But with the design for theater, I think that's quite different. And in a way, it's actually it's both parallel and contradictory in some ways of what you said, Joe. Because I think for me, like, my work is one step removed from the audience or to yours. So I couldn't adjust a piece just based on the reactions I see.
Yeah, it's funny because we all want the reason why we make theatre or music or sound or any art is to create an effect, is to have an effect on someone or start some movement or anything like that. I think about some of the pieces that we've done that haven't been traditional theatre pieces, such as Protest Poetry, Peace and Song, and My Gay Best Friend. Think about those ones in terms of where it wasn't necessarily about theatre, quote unquote. It was more about, we want to send a message. And especially in the case of My Gay Best Friend, we want to create a space for this community. That's very much putting the audience at the forefront and saying, listen, this is a space for you. And we want to make sure that we use what we do as a platform for the larger world. So in a way, that is putting the audience very much at the center of what we do. I don't know if, Adam, maybe you agree, disagree, have some more thoughts on those two specific projects as it relates to that?
I think, especially with My Gay Best Friend and Poetry, Protest, Peace and Song, we do put the audience at the forefront of it because it is about the artists supporting and navigating, again, what the words are on the page. So going back and referring back to the text as the most important piece. And Protest, Poetry, Peace and Song was more about raising funds and bringing awareness to certain situations and stuff. But it is about the artist getting in front of the audience and saying, this is my story, this is what I need to tell you. What you want to do with that information, go ahead and figure out yourselves. but it's the most important thing is the audience. And I think the connectivity that the artist has with the audience, especially in those two events. Yeah, is there any audience feedback that you've been given? I know, Aaron, you said no there, but is there any audience feedback that you've ever been given that has influenced the way in which you navigate going ahead with the work?
That's a good one. That's a real good one. I think that the audience can sometimes, it's not necessarily verbal feedback, like someone coming up to me and saying, Joe, this was good, this was not. It's more so like I spoke about how they're the missing piece of the puzzle and sort of understanding where lines work, where lines don't, where pacing works, where maybe you can feel that they're not quite as captivated as they could be. I always remember there was one show that I did a while ago. There was an intense back and forth between me and someone on the stage, and I could feel the audience after I think I said one line. I could feel the entire audience just go and just sort of lean in a little bit, and that's a sense of feedback where it's like, okay, put a pin in that and keep it. Alternatively, if you say a joke or there's a comedic moment on stage and it just falls flat, that's also feedback. So I don't think necessarily the feedback from an audience, at least in my experience, just come from, okay, Joe, this was good, this was bad. It's come from what they've responded to in the moment as they're experiencing the piece.
It's interesting that you say that, because for me as a creative, as a director, sometimes as a writer, the thing that I hate the most is reviews. And I hate getting bad reviews as much as I hate getting great reviews. Because it first of all, because it's on a website or it's written down or something, it's more permanent than someone saying that feedback to you in person. And it's there for the rest of time, because if someone Googles whatever production or whatever name, it pops up. But it's just really interesting that you talk about the in-moment feedback that you get in comparison to a more long length feedback that you get.
A more probably constructed sense of feedback is what a review is. It's very constructed. It's very, I liked this worked, this didn't. Yeah.
They try to be, at least.
Yeah.
Because there are some reviews that just tell the plot line.
Yeah.
And there are some reviews that I think it takes a skill and it takes a certain mindset to write a really good review that sometimes isn't done in the best way possible by that person who's come to review. So we've had a range at Peripeteia. We've had 2-star reviews. We've never had one, thank God. But we've
touch
had
wood. Someone touch wood. Someone touch wood.
But we've had 5-star reviews as well, and 4 stars. We've had plentiful and really interesting points made within the review. But that has a negative knock-on effect sometimes, and sometimes a positive effect with the actors on stage. And that's why I always say I don't share reviews till after the production's over. Because it does have an impact on the work, and it does have, if you've got a really good review, that creates a buzz that you sometimes go off the rails with in certain moments that we've picked out. But if there's reviews in which you've got 2 or 3 stars, then you sometimes dip in that energy in those moments as well. So I do think, although we started off with audience, but reviewers are audience at the end of the day, they still have some sort of dealings with the piece and the end product of it as well. Adaptation is something that we've not really done too much of at Peripeteia. We've obviously done the dreams and we've done the human voice. But Aaron, how is it working with an adapted piece of writing rather than a new piece of work, sound design wise?
I don't think really there would be that much difference for me, at least. Because yeah, I think just because I don't think, as we established it before, it's always the text that should be the kind of fundamental or the glue between everyone's work. From my perspective, I don't think it is that much of a difference if it's a new or an already existing writing. Having said that, if there are already existing accompaniments that are kind of the go-to versions, for example, the Dreams is very much an obvious example, because there is the radio show or the radio play that we took as a reference point. But even then, I think we tried to treat it as something new, like as if it was made today. So rather than imitating what was done back in the, I want to say 60s is when it was aired. We just tried to think about, okay, what were kind of the core principles or the things they tried to achieve back then, and how would they translate into today's scene. Yeah, that's not a very straightforward answer, but
but I think it's interesting because there's never a straightforward path to choose. I think it's project to project, production to production. You've mentioned before, like the most rewarding and fulfilling project that we've done so far is Mum, Can You Hear Me? But that was totally different to The Human Voice or Love.
Yeah.
So I do think there is no straightforward path or no straightforward answer.
Yeah. That is true. And well, yeah, I guess in a way, not being super well versed in theater history, and that's an understatement, is like it could be an advantage. Like you always have a fresh perspective, and yeah, I think that's at least interesting. And then again, just because of the collaboration, if you come up with something that's completely unfitting, then other people would hold you back from that, and kind of just nudge you to the right.
I think as well, though, Aaron, as you say there, the sort of lack of theatre experience that you have, I think that, at least how I view it, would be almost a blessing, because you can view things from a fresh lens, like you kind of alluded to there. Like, you get to make a soundscape or a piece of music or something like that without any preconceived notions about theatre. And I think that that's such a gift that we have for someone in house at Peripeteia, because it means that sure, it might not work, but we can find out. As opposed to having someone, no disrespect to sound makers who have those roots in theatre, but I think that we can definitely use that as a benefit in terms of, okay, here's someone who doesn't have the most experience in theatre, but let's use that and let's see what little nuggets, what little gems come from that. So that's how I view it, as someone who is about to listen to the soundscape for Dreams tonight as he winds down for bed. But no, yeah, I would view that as an absolute blessing, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think I try to frame it that way, but obviously that's again the teamwork, and that's what makes it a blessing instead of just a liability, I guess.
Final question then. How do you sustain your creativity and passion over time?
Oof. I think that it's like anything, you've got to keep doing it. And I've no shame in saying this. The last maybe 12, 18 months of my creative life have not been the strongest, in terms of I've not been in that bubble as much as I would like to have been. I know that me and Adam have had conversations about this before, but for me, especially being part of Dreams and having conversations like this, it reminds me of the importance that theatre, arts, creativity, everything like that, the importance that that has in my life, and how much more fulfillment I gain from that. And that's the whole reason why Peripeteia was started. It's for the love of what we do. So I know that I need to, in order to sustain my creativity, just be involved in that realm more, not just in terms of viewing productions that we do or being involved maybe in the background, but actually having something to get my teeth into. That's where I feel, without sounding too cliche, the most alive, because when I'm having conversations like this, it just, like I say, it reminds me that, yeah, this is what I like to do. This is what I enjoy. So that's what I hope to do going forward.
Because I think there's a book somewhere called Letters for a Poet or something. And it is one of those things where if you wake up as a writer, you are a writer. You don't.
Yeah.
So it's the same as acting, it's the same as directing.
Yeah.
You are creative at the end of the day. Sound design, you are creative. And there's no shame, I don't think, in taking those breaks and doing that, whatever you need to do for your own space and your own well-being or mental well-being, whatever it is. And then you can always come back, because no one stops being a creative.
Yeah.
It is a human nature, it is a mindset. How about you, Aaron? What's your sustainability like with creativity?
Yeah, I think very much the same. And what I find helps really is just being surrounded by other creative people. So yeah, I think I do find great inspiration in what my flatmate does, because he's also writing and producing and directing. So just seeing his little practices, because he's also very diligent about, even if what he does professionally is not the most fulfilling part of that, because it's mostly the painful production, admin and to-dos. You still have these little rituals, which I find very, very interesting and motivating. And I guess another thing is biopics. Always work. Like, just want you to do more art and creative stuff. So yeah, I think that's the two things I hype myself up with, and yeah, just keep pushing forward.
I think that's the thing. You don't stop once you find your tribe as well.
Yeah,
You have that support that allows you to push forward and find your passion at the end of the day. Like I said, you are a creative. You don't become one. I do think it is one of those things where it is embedded in you that you are just creative. I know many people that are producers, directors, actors, but also paint on the side or also write on the side, and they just keep going. Just like Dora said, just keep swimming. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that wraps us up nicely. Bonus question though, what advice would you give to someone? So say the audience watching this tonight.
This isn't the most practical thing, but I think that it's a question that I've been asking, a piece of advice and a question that I've been saying to myself, which is, if money and status were no object, what would you spend your time doing? And just do more of that. Because then surely you'll find something that you enjoy, whether it be creative or otherwise. I think, yeah, if money and status were no object, what would you spend your time doing?
Interesting. Yeah, I want to say something very similar. It is also a question which I've found really enlightening in a way. But what is it that you find yourself enjoying the most? Like, when you're completely just free and liberated, and like you don't even recognize that just the amount of bliss you get. It's always like, wow, what was that? And yeah, what are those things that kind of get you into that state?
It has been an absolute joy to spend the past hour speaking to you both. Thank you for joining me. We have been Peripeteia Theatre Company. Thank you for watching. We currently have a fundraiser going on to raise funds for unsupported and unrepresented writers. It'll be linked in the description down below. We also have a show, which is a fundraiser celebrating our 5th birthday at 53-2 in Manchester. The ticket link will also be in the description of the video. Thank you both for
Thank you.
this wonderful evening.